Okay, Chair, we're live now. You can begin.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry about the delay, but that's happened sometime, doesn't it? Agenda item 1, Chair's introduction. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Planning and Development Committee. And I remind all participants that normal rules of procedure apply. For example, comments and questions must be directed through the Chair. As we are meeting virtually, proceedings may take slightly longer, so your patience is appreciated. As per our virtual meetings, if questions have been received prior to the meeting, I will call on the relevant member at the appropriate time to raise that question. If you are invited to speak, please state your name and be as specific as possible about which issue it is you are speaking to. Whilst members of the public can view this meeting via YouTube Live, they will not be able to actively participate or comment on proceedings. As this meeting is being live streamed, can I please remind all participants that their conduct should reflect this. All agents, applicants or objectors that wish to speak on a particular application have had the opportunity to inform the Planning Department in advance of today's meeting. I will invite those individuals to present their cases at the appropriate time in proceedings. With holding the meeting remotely to reduce the likelihood of technical issues, these individuals have been asked to dial into the meeting by telephone. Please be advised there will be a time limit of 5 minutes for those who wish to speak in support of an application and 5 minutes who wish to speak in objection. For example, if more than one person wishes to speak in objection, time allocation of 5 minutes will be divided between those speakers. There may also be ward councillors in attendance who wish to speak. I'm the chair of this committee today, and my name is Councillor John Hobson. Also in attendance, we have Paul Clark and Andy Glossop from Planning. Can't see anybody from Transport. Is anybody there from Transport?
No, Chair.
Okay. Emma Loughran from Legal Department, Chris Lunn and Georgina Moore from Democratic Services. The other individuals you can see in attendance are councillors who are members of this committee, and they will make the decisions on the applications scheduled for today's meeting. Agenda item number 2, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No apologies have been received, Chair.
Right, agenda item 3. Do we have any declarations of interest from members of the committee in respect of the item scheduled for consideration at today's meeting? Well, I have 2. Declaration of interest on Claremont Drive and West Moor View. Both of these are in my ward.
Chair, I have a declaration of interest on 8 Road in my ward.
Thank you, Councillor. Agenda item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. Can we approve the minutes as a true record? As there's no dissent, shall we take it that those minutes are now agreed? Right, thank you. Agenda item 5. Due to the number of people that we have who wish to speak, I'm going to change the order of business as per Council Procedure Rule number 5. So what we'll do first, we'll start off with Claremont Drive, then Westmoor View, then Hemlington Road, and then St Cuthbert's Youth Community Centre. The legal representative will monitor the time taken by each applicant, agent or objector to present their case. Legal representative will advise once the time has been expired. Right. So, just have to bear with me a second because I've just picked all my papers up downstairs and a little bit. Right, so we'll now ask Andy if Andy will show his screen. Andy will show his screen and let us have a look at the first application, which is 7 Claremont Drive. Andy?
Thank you, Chair. You say 7 Claremont first, yeah?
Yes, please, yes.
Okay. Bear with me 2 seconds while I get down to that one. Okay, so
Sorry for rushing you up, but there's 6 people wishing to speak today, so what we're trying to do is get the applications with speakers in, to get them out of the way so those people are not hanging on to their telephones.
yeah, thank you, Chair. So this planning application, it seeks permission for the erection of extensions to the side and the rear of the property. The side extension would require the demolition of the existing garage, the existing flat roof garage at the site. Planning permission had been previously granted for an extension to this property. So this proposal essentially seeks to modify the approved scheme. The initially approved scheme didn't receive any objections to it, and so that was determined by officers under the normal scheme of delegation. This current application, however, has got 3 objections to it, and again, in line with the scheme of delegation, it has needed to come to planning committee for a decision. So that's where it stands at the moment. If we look at the existing arrangements then, as well as the approved scheme, and I think then probably look at this latest proposal, it'll hopefully put it into context for members. So the existing site layout, we can see the application site edged in red. The property, it's a bungalow. It's one of several with very consistent building lines with others in the street. All properties have got front gardens, rear gardens, and I think members can probably pick that up from the slide that's on show. We have a street sort of view to put that in context somewhat, which gives members a feel for the character of this area. A lot of the properties are very similar throughout this estate. In terms of the approved scheme then, permission was granted. It was for the demolition of the garage and for effectively the rebuilding of the garage, if you like, but coming slightly forward, that's at the side, and for a hip roof above that, as well as a 3 metre by 4 metre extension at the rear of the property. The dormer was approved in the front roof slope and in the rear roof slope, as well as a couple of roof lights within that. So that's the approved scheme that's on the screens at the moment. And the little map in the corner just shows where the extensions are taking place. So turning to the proposed scheme, now being considered, the proposal is essentially to replace the garage and extend above what is the garage. The rear extension that's proposed is the same as what's already been approved. It's all part of the same scheme effectively. The proposed roof goes no higher than the existing, and from an officer perspective, it's considered it would be in keeping with the design and appearance of that existing bungalow in that sense. The dormer that's now proposed in the front would match the dormer that's already been approved in the front elevation. It's set in from the sides of the roof. It's set up from the gutter line, and it helps those aspects help to prevent it from dominating the sort of roofscape, which officers consider aligns with the guidance in the Martin West neighbourhood plan. The rear elevation shows the same sort of extension, but from the rear of the property, obviously just going above that section to the left-hand side. And we see the rear extension that provides a single room at ground floor level. The gutter line is slightly above that of the existing bungalow, and the ridge line is no higher than the existing bungalow. Objection has been received, which is detailed in the reports, and it includes considerations around feeling that the proposed extension is contrary to the Martin West neighbourhood plan, feeling that it would turn the bungalow into a house, that it wouldn't match the street scene, that the flat roof garages in this estate are a feature of the estate, and that they give an impression of space between properties, and that will be lost from extending above the garage, and concerns in relation to a loss of light from the adjacent windows or window, particularly in the adjacent property, and creating a sense of overbearing impact and overshadowing on that adjacent property. The extension, it does alter obviously the scale of the development. It will reduce the apparent gap between the properties. Officers' considerations that the addition is essentially the building of a pitched roof over the existing garage, albeit extending forward slightly. The roof is designed to match that of the host property and those adjacent. And the roof, yeah, it will add some dominance to the property, and it will in part overshadow slightly the adjacent property, but it remains to be visibly a bungalow with a pitched roof, which is really consistent with the general character of the area. And Chair, from an officer perspective, the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Does anybody on the committee wish to ask Andy any questions on this? Councillor Ostrom, I can see you. Councillor Ostrom. Can't hear you, Councillor.
So just to clarify, is the existing roof going to remain with just dormer windows put into it, or is it going to be a new roof?
Andy, can you take that?
For the existing part of the bungalow, that dormer that you saw to the left-hand side from the front, that's put into the new roof, as I understand it. Because the roof's not going any higher than the existing roof line. It's but there is a proposed dormer in the new part that is part of this extension as well. That would be a completely new roof above that garage, because it's a flat roof now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Platt, got your hand up.
Can we see a photograph?
Can't hear you, Councillor. That's it. Go on, carry on.
Yeah, can we see a photograph again, Andrew, of the bungalow? And yeah, and the sort of outline of the street, please.
I'll just bring that up, Councillor. You should be seeing that, hopefully.
Which bungalow is it? One on the left or the one on the right?
The one with the car on the drive, Councillor.
Oh, the one on the left. Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Right. Any more questions? Anybody else? I think David Branson had his hand up first. Councillor Branson?
Yes, just very simply, could you possibly show us the plans of what was originally agreed at 10? I just wanted to see what the arrangement was on the garage there, please. What's the plans that were accepted before we came to here?
That's it.
So it actually has a roof on. So the proposal is that the garage would have a hip roof on. Yeah, I got that. That's lovely.
Yeah. That was approved with a hip, and what the scheme is now is essentially to create a gable, which is, I don't know if you can see the cursor there, which would square off, effectively square off this this roof to match the sort of same style as what's on the opposite side.
I understand. That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else had their hand up? David Cope, Councillor Cope.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to get my head around the difference between this and then becoming a house. How many of the properties along there actually have dormer windows in already, or is this going to be a first along there? Because as far as I understand, that's the predominance of bungalows in that area.
Andy?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it's an estate of, absolutely, it's an estate of bungalows. There's a few of them that have gone into the loft space. You can see that from some of the imagery that's about. If I'll just quickly share the screen again, if I may, Chair.
Yes, you can.
I've got an image of some other properties within the very nearby street scene, not sort of on the opposite side and just along. Hopefully that will share shortly. So you can just see from this image that there are windows within the loft space, what we would call the loft space on some of these properties. And this property here in the bottom, that's an existing hip roof that's been added in the past to the flat roof section. So it's not entirely unheard of for some of these properties to have a first floor to them, but I think visibly from the outside, the majority are visibly bungalows, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. Anybody else got their hand up? Nobody? I can't see. Oh, I can see Councillor Garvey. Okay. I think I can see everybody now. Right. Okay, no more questions. We'll turn to objectors. We have one objector. It's Mrs. Christine Henderson. Are you with us, Mrs. Henderson?
Mrs. Henderson, you'll have to press star and 6 to unmute your microphone.
Right, I've pressed that now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
5 minutes, Mrs. Henderson.
Right, okay then. This proposed development is out of character in terms of its appearance compared with existing developments in the area. Our property will be overshadowed by this extension of a gable end roof and the dormer, and there would be a loss of light to our property. We realise it is not the only source of light for the bedroom, but the entrance door to this room is opposite that window, which means that every time we enter the bedroom, we have an overbearing brick wall close to our property window. We did not object originally to the plans submitted by number 7, and at the time we were assured by them that they had no intention of putting a gable roof next to our property, so it would not affect the light and not be overbearing. We have lived in this property for less than 2 years, and at the time of purchasing the property, if this extension had been in place as per these plans, we would never have bought the property because of the overbearing nature of the roof line. In planning consideration and assessment in bullet point 10, it states that, quote, the previous approved planning application to have a hipped roof, which is not a typical design feature to the estate, yet both number 5 and number 3 Claremont Drive have hipped roofs. It is also stated in the same bullet point that the hipped roof was introduced to lessen the impact on the neighbouring property, namely ourselves at number 9. So why is this being disregarded now? A gable roof is definitely not a more consistent character of the extension, as no one in the whole road has a full gable roof. We fully object to the alterations from the original plans and believe the gable roof and dormer window will impact on our property by being visually intrusive, overbearing and causing loss of light. This estate was built to maintain the amenity and privacy of adjoining bungalows and give the impression of space between the properties. This will be lost to us if the plans go ahead. We believe the proposed plans do not respect the local context or street pattern, and it would be out of character for the area to the detriment of the local amenity. That concludes our objection.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Henderson. Anybody want to ask Mrs. Henderson a question? Councillor Garvey?
Thanks, Chair. Can I just ask Mrs. Henderson, did you say that you had no objections with the original plans?
No, we had no objections because it was a hipped roof and over the garage, and it didn't intrude onto our property.
Yeah, thank you. Understood. Thanks, Chair.
Andy, do you want to come in and say something? Mr. Glossop? You wish to come in and answer anything that Mrs. Henderson has said?
I don't think there's anything for me to particularly pick up on, Chair. I've obviously given the officer's opinion. I think just talking about predominant character, the predominant character is gable roofs within the street. But there are, yeah, as Mrs. Henderson says, there are a couple of hips that have been added in the more recent times. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Okay. Now we have a ward councillor who wishes to speak. Councillor Chris Hobson, are you with us? Yes, she is.
I am. Right, Mr. Chairman, members, officers, this extension goes totally against our neighbourhood plan. This neighbourhood plan was written by the residents, for the residents, and agreed with the residents of Martin West Ward, Middlesbrough Council and government inspectors. The neighbourhood plan point 73 states that dormer windows should be kept to a minimum to ensure they do not over-dominate or overtake the roof space. 3 dormers is far too many, and it is making a bungalow into a house. And as we all know, we have a shortage of bungalows in Middlesbrough. At point 75, the neighbourhood plan states that all extensions or modifications to existing premises will continue to reflect the building style and materials that have presided over many years. This will totally go against this. At point 76, the neighbourhood plan states that additions to premises will reflect style and vernacular of original building, not significantly change form, bulk and general design or harm its landscape character. This is totally changing the character of this building. As explained in the report, policy MW5 states that alterations and extensions to residential property should reflect the scale, detail and materials of the parent building. Specifically, the policy states that proposals should not detract from the character of the property or neighbouring properties, not cause significant harm to the amenities of nearby properties through overlooking or overshadowing. This will definitely cause overshadowing and be a blot on the landscape for the next door property. Policy MW6 requires new development to reflect and enhance the character of the area in terms of scale, massing, proportion, form and materials. It must be similar in scale and proportion to the existing buildings and not have no bearing or detrimental impact on existing properties. This would not impact the existing buildings. In fact, it would be totally detrimental to these beautiful bungalows and also set a precedent. I ask that the committee refuses this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, now we do have an agent with us for this application. Andy Bircham, are you with us, Mr. Bircham?
Mr. Bircham, you need to press *6 to unmute your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Mr. Bircham, is that you?
Hello, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. You've got five minutes, Mr. Bircham.
Okay, no problem. Except some of it will probably be sort of reaffirming what Andy's already said. I'll make a start. Okay. Prior to submission of the current scheme, we were granted approval earlier in the year on a very similar scheme with no objections raised. The only major differences between this scheme and the previous scheme is the change from a hipped roof on the side extension to a gable end design and the introduction of an additional dormer to match the other side. The gable end design is immediately identifiable as a major improvement over the original hipped roof design and is more in keeping with the immediate surrounds of Claremont Drive, which are predominantly gable end designed bungalows. The gable end design provides a balance with the previous scheme lacked, and it should be noted that the design is not oppressing to any primary windows of the neighbouring property. The additional dormer offers symmetry with the already approved adjacent dormer, and should be highlighted that these dormers are only small pitch roof dormers which can be considered to be in line with the guidance and policy, local plan and neighbourhood plan, and not harmful to the street scene. Both myself and Middlesbrough Development Control Case Officer pushed for this gable end design during the original application process. However, it was only after the approval was granted that my client found more time to reflect and reconsider, and as such the revised scheme was submitted. There's clear demand for these types of extension, with many other successful examples of similar developments both locally and within the immediate estate. The new extensions and alterations are of good design in keeping with the property and other local development in terms of size, scale, materials, and as such make a positive contribution to the street scene. It is in our view that the proposed extensions and alterations would not result in loss or have any adverse effect on the surrounding residential area, and therefore requested that this scheme be granted approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bircham. Any of the committee wish to ask Mr. Bircham a question? Councillor Garvey.
Thanks, Chair. Just to clear something up, I'm pretty sure the lady objecting, Mrs. Henderson, said that it did affect one of her windows. Can we confirm or deny this?
There is a window to her side gable, yes, but there's a good distance between the properties. We're not coming any closer than what the original property is, apart from obviously we have got a gable end there. That is not a primary window, and I believe there are other windows. I think she herself has built quite a massive, large dormer across the back of her property quite recently, along with another extension. So she's got quite a large rear dormer, which I believe will have windows that serve that room also.
Through Chair, can I just reaffirm a question? So when you say that there was no, this isn't affecting any windows, so from the plans, because initially I did find the plans had to follow from what was okayed and what's happening now. So would I be right to say we're basically taking a roof like that and we're putting it like that, and then we're saying it's not closer to the adjacent properties' windows because that would be closer.
Yes, the existing wall position will be built up to a gable end rather than obviously at the moment it is a flat roof.
So it would be closer to the adjacent properties' window because there'd be bricks there where there isn't bricks now.
The roof space, yes, will become closer to the adjacent properties' window. But
So it is closer, right?
There's a secondary window, not a primary window.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear it up because initially you said that it wouldn't affect next door's windows, and it clearly does. I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I just point out that that's also part of an extension because they've extended into their roof space.
Chair, you're on mute, I think.
Can you hear me now? Yes?
Yeah.
Right. Anybody else got anything to say before I let the committee sit down and make a decision on this application? Councillor Cope, you've got two hands up this time.
I thought you couldn't. I know. I thought you couldn't say the other one. I just want to establish in my mind the difference between a bungalow, a dormer bungalow, and effectively what's implied. There are other properties like this when I understand there isn't. I'm trying to understand where originally the McGuinness plot was purely bungalows. You can turn it into a dormer bungalow, I accept that. But where this is, it's a matter of scale. It's turning it from a bungalow, dormer bungalow into effectively a full-size house. Can you give me any other examples of that on the estate? Because you said there were other designs like that, or is it just partial designs?
Can you comment on that, Andy, please?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, I mean, anything with two floors, people might term it to be a house, I guess. But the reality is this is all within the roof space. This is not the gutter line, what we call the eaves level is not increasing on this property. So it's all within the roof space, and that's traditionally what people would term a dormer bungalow. I'm just very quickly going to share the screen again, Chair, just so I can just reaffirm or clarify the situation there. Hopefully that should be sharing. So because all the additional floor space is within that pitched roof, that's what you're seeing there above the property is not a wall above the gutter line, which is this line here. That's a wall. This is all roof here. This is all within the roof slope of the property. So we would term that typically as a dormer bungalow. Yeah, it's a two-story property, but we would typically call that a dormer bungalow. And I think just to reaffirm what Councillor Garvey was questioning, yeah, that's what's been approved with a sloping hip, and it is seeking to go to this squared off hip, which will bring it closer in line to. You can just about see the window in the side elevation, in the peak of that side elevation there. So this wall would go up at this point here, and that ridge line would follow along in line with the side of the garage. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, that will look straight in the side of that wall at a distance of not many feet, in as far as I can see it from that.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Anybody else got anything to say? Any more comments? David Branson, Councillor Branson, you got your hand up?
Yes. I mean, I went down Claremont Avenue to have a look, or Claremont Drive. I couldn't see any evidence of other properties that had a similar type of roof as been proposed on the new plans. Is that the situation? I mean, there were garages, but they had a hip roof if they had a roof over them. Is that the case? Am I correct that there are no other properties on Claremont Drive with a similar roof, or have I just missed it? I wonder if probably Andrew could answer on that.
Andy, please, can you answer?
I'm not aware. We're not aware of one that's exactly comparable. But if I go again back to that version that we shared, showing the hip roof, which is what's been approved already. Just bear with it. It's just taking a few seconds in between me clicking buttons and things popping up on the screen here. So if I just go through these to the images at the bottom. Yeah, so there's one with an existing hip. There is one which I haven't got an image of actually, but there's one where they've put a pitched roof above the garage, but the first part of the garage, so up against just above the garage doors, the first half going back is a flat roof, and then it's a pitched gable roof above the rear half of the side element. So it's not a full gable like this. I'm not aware of full gables such as this within the estate particularly.
Yeah, that's really the question I wanted to answer. There's nothing comparable. In all cases, there's more space.
Thank you, Councillor Branson. Thank you, Andy. Anybody else get the hand up? Councillor Wilson, your hand is waving.
Thank you, Chair. I drove up there yesterday, Chair. I didn't see any of the bungalows with a full gable end like that. So they're just all hips. I went right way up and right way back down. I couldn't see anything with a full gable end. So that's where I think it should be what we've got now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Anybody else got anything to say? No, all looks quiet, right? So we'll now go to the committee, and we'll see whether someone will recommend a proposal. Anybody in the committee got anything to say? Councillor Thompson, your hand's waving.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got to say that I can't support this application. I think the impact on the neighbours and the way it'll be out of character within the area, so I can't support it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor, does anybody wish to second that?
I'll second that.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Garvey, you wish to say something?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm in total agreement with Councillor Thompson. The original plans were okayed by the neighbour. Everything was okay. Everything was hunky dory, and then this second proposal was put forward, and that's when the neighbours decided that that's not agreeable. And then if you do look at the local plan saying that the houses are to be similar, and that the councillors who've been out on site cannot find anything similar to the new proposal, shows that it's not in keeping. So I would suggest that we turn this application down, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Nugent first.
Yeah, what has been said earlier on and by Councillor Thompson, I'm inclined to agree with that as well, because the people who purchased the bungalows with the view of how they stood at the time, and it didn't, they weren't looking at altering the character of the area. So I feel that this will impinge on neighbours and perhaps create a precedent for something different in the future with these buildings. So I don't agree with it either.
Thank you. Councillor Dodds, you had your hand up. Councillor Dodds? No?
I'm in agreement with Councillor Thompson and the others. I do think the original approved application looked a lot better and it was much nicer for the neighbours. That's it really. I just agree with the first approval and not the second one.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Right, we shall go to a vote. What we're voting on is the proposal proposed by Councillor Thompson that we reject this application. So I'll call people's names out as we have done in the past. All you need to do is say for, against, or abstain.
Chair, if I can just come in for 1 second. So Councillor Thompson suggested that really reasons for refusal, I guess, and suggesting they were based on it being out of character and on the impact on the neighbours. So they're the two things that I've got down as the suggested reasons for refusal.
Well, the third one is it's against all the rules of the Martin West Neighbourhood Plan, which is a material planning consideration in its own right, as you know.
I think we can probably link those two reasons that Councillor Thompson put forward to the Martin West Neighbourhood Plan and the guidance within it. But I think to say it's against all the rules of something that's a generic document is a bit, possibly a little bit questionable. But yeah, so that I've got those.
Got to try, haven't you?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'll call people's names out, and it's for, against, or abstain. We'll start at the bottom. Councillor Wilson.
Against.
Hang on. Should be against the plan. It make it clear.
Yes.
You
Right.
say, yeah.
I think your vote should be for, Councillor. I think that's what you should be saying.
It's for Janet Thompson's motion. So that
For Janet Thompson's motion.
For Janet Thompson's motion, yes.
Janet Thompson, you must be for as well. Councillor Rostron.
Yeah, for.
Jim Platt. Councillor Platt.
Was that me you were saying, John?
Councillor Platt.
Councillor Dodds as well. Sorry about that. I am for Councillor Thompson's motion against the planning.
Right, Councillor Nugent.
With Councillor Thompson's motion, I'm against the planning.
Councillor Garvey.
For.
Councillor Dodds.
For.
Councillor Branson.
For.
Councillor Cook.
For.
Councillor Hobson. John Hobson, for. Do we have a score, Georgie?
Yes, Chair, I can confirm that all 10 members of the committee have voted to refuse the application.
Right, so I can now confirm that following the vote, the decision of the committee is to refuse the application.
What are you doing?
Thank you very much. We will now turn to application number 2, second one to do today, which is the Westmoor View. Andy, if you would like to share your screen with us, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just share that now. Okay, so this application, it's for the subdivision of the existing care home building into 3 dwellings and the erection of 2 additional dwellings. There's a slight mistake in the report about this, but essentially it's 5 dwellings in total, 3 by conversion and 2 new properties. The site is located just off Dixon's Bank. It's within a residential area of the town and it's within the residential limits of development for Middlesbrough, which establishes a principle of new residential development in this general location. We can see from the map here that the site consists of the main care home building. There's an access onto and off Dixon's Bank. We've got an area of vehicle parking and sort of hard surfacing in front of the care home building, and that separates kind of the built area from a fairly extensive lawned area. And I think another important feature of this site is the trees which surround the really the sort of perimeter, in particular the southern, southwestern and eastern boundaries of the site. I think from this slide as well, we probably get a perspective of the scale and layout of properties that surround the site. So we can see that the application site is very much different to those estate sort of layout type properties that are surrounding it. We have another image as well. So this is like a satellite view, and this really helps to show the extent of lawn within the central part of the site and the extent of tree cover that's on the site. To give members a little bit more context about this existing site, so we've got the existing street scene along this part of Dixon's Bank. You can see that it's heavily treed, and a good number of those trees are within the application site. It's largely characterised by sort of mature trees siding the roads at this point. It's also a relatively straight section of road. The application access, if people can see the marker, is that entrance there where there's a little whiteboard on the wall. So we can see there's good visibility to the south, and then at the bottom that's showing the visibility to the north. And I think the other thing this shows is that the entrance is set back behind the footpath, behind the cycleway and behind a verge. So it's several meters set back off the highway. We have the existing buildings on the site. So we've got the historic Westmore house, which is on the left hand side there, and the more recent addition. All of that forms the care home. And we've also got an image which is, apologies, it's probably badly stitched together but this is roughly what it looks like on site, and that shows the extent of the lawn that's within the site. And looking the other way to some extent shows the trees that again on the southern boundary there and on the eastern boundary. So we can see from this existing site layout plan, there's 18 car parking spaces to the front of the property. There's probably more space than that in reality for parking vehicles, because there's a lot of hard standing directly in front of the main dwelling, the main care home building. Turning to the proposal then. So this scheme is looking to split the existing care home into 3 properties. So I've numbered those 1, 2, 3 on the slides. That main old Westmore house would remain a single, or would become again a single unit of accommodation, so a single dwelling. And the more modern care home building would split into 2 detached properties, and it would achieve that by demolition of these 2 links. So there's a link there between the old and the new, and then there's a link here where you can see the columns and the little sort of cover detail. That central section at both single ground floor and first floor would be demolished to create 2 separate buildings. The footprint of those 2 converted properties out of the modern section would stay exactly the same, apart from the gap being created between the 2. They're no closer to the properties to the rear, and the position of windows is largely in the same positions as what they are now. What we can see here highlighted in blue is that some of the windows would be elongated at ground floor on the northern elevation at the back of these, but the general principle of these properties, so you can see these 2 being created, the links have now gone, shown on this plan, and we've got residential properties to the rear, and that relationship is not changing. It's currently in a residential use now, and it would just be a different form of residential use, if that makes sense. So this proposal, in addition to those conversions, seeks to erect 2 new dwellings on the lawned area of the site. These are 2 properties which, so we've got them shown here within that lawned area. We can see that the treed area remains around the edge. These are what we sometimes deem or call 2.5 stories. It's effectively a 2-story elevation with rooms in the roof. Their appearance has been designed to reflect some of the features of the existing properties on site. So we've got 2-story bay windows, we've got chimney details and other bits and pieces. We've also got a drawing that's the rear of the proposed properties on the bottom right hand side there. We've also got a section through, so this shows the modern section of the care home or part of it, and this shows the new property. The in between would be effectively the driveway coming in, and what this hopefully shows is that if you run across from the gutter line of the existing properties to the gutter line of the new, it's slightly lower on these proposed properties, but the overall height is approximately the same. So these properties are of a similar scale. If we just flick back to the footprints, you can see that these are of a similar scale to the footprints of the other properties within the site through what the conversion would achieve. There's a number of objections which have been received in relation to the application. They raise a number of issues. They're detailed within the main report that members have got. I think just to touch on the sort of key areas or the main areas that have objectors have raised. Consider there'll be a loss of privacy, a loss of heritage curtilage, heritage grounds, this being in the grounds of what we deem to be a heritage property, and a loss of landscaping associated with that. Concerns that there'll be a loss of wildlife habitat, that the properties aren't in scale with the properties in the area, that the access isn't safe, and that there's impacts on increased traffic. If we just look at the proposed site plan again, we can see the properties essentially would form a group within the site. The existing buildings to the north, as I've already said, they're not going any closer to the properties at the rear. It is a limited space. I think it's approximately 7 meters and 9 meters from these two properties, and that is limited. However, it's not. This proposal is not changing that arrangement. It's not worsening that current situation. With regards to the new properties, these are set a significant distance from the properties to the south. I think that's approximately 35 meters. Our design guide normally suggests 21 meters from a rear to a rear, and so it's nearly double that effectively. The national, moving on to other considerations, the national planning guidance requires a reasonable assessment of development which affects heritage assets. The application property, which was formerly known as Westmore House, is what we call a non-designated heritage asset. It's not what we call a listed building. We've got listed buildings in Middlesbrough. They're nationally recognised as being important for one reason or another. And we then have a local list, which is the next step down the hierarchy. This property is not on the local list, and it's not a nationally listed building. So it's at the lower end of the hierarchy of sort of heritage assets, if you like, what we call one designated heritage asset. And so we could only give a certain amount of significance to or weight to sort of considerations against this. But national guidance does say that account should be taken in determining an application, and suggests that it has to be a balanced judgment having regard to the scale of any harm or the loss of any significance to the heritage asset. So important here is what is the significance of the heritage asset in question. So officers' consideration is that the significance of Westmore House is really that it's a farmhouse or former farmhouse farmstead arrangement that was previously defined. The Westmore House was separate from Westmore Farm that used to exist on the site and adjacent, because this was all surrounded by fields many years ago. But the significance really comes from its survival as a rural house from the mid-19th century. The surroundings have obviously changed massively. We've got housing estates surrounding this site now, so that wider landscape's changed. The proposed scheme as a whole will serve to put the main property on the site into a single residential property, and it'll sever the more modern addition, and those points are considered to be positive to the significance of this heritage asset or non-designated heritage asset. In addition to that, the property would retain a long curtilage. So if we look at that site plan, the two properties that are proposed have purposely not been put in front of the old historic property. So the older part of the property would retain a long lawn and long tree long garden with trees in it, going all the way to the existing boundary with the existing properties at the south there, circa sort of, I guess, about 60 metres or something like that. Notwithstanding that, the two proposed properties, they will remove some of the openness of the wider lawned area, but the scheme does retain the mature trees on the site and the value that the trees provide to the landscape character of the area. I think when it was initially submitted, there was reference to 3 TPO trees being removed from the site. The scheme's been amended slightly, and that is no longer the case. All TPO'd trees, so all protected trees on the site, would be maintained by this scheme. So really, it comes to a balance of those positive changes and positive benefits to the old property on the site, and the impacts of the sort of, if you like, the negative aspects of that. One officer's view is that that this proposed development will have a low impact to the significance of Westmore House as a non-designated heritage asset. Moving on then, so in view of the retention of the gardens and the substantial peripheral landscaping, it's considered that the proposal will not unduly affect the sort of wildlife habitat within this area. There'll still be a significant amount of trees, there'll still be a significant amount of gardens within this area, so the wildlife habitat shouldn't be significantly affected. There are conditions recommended which require trees to be protected through construction and replaced should any damage or any issues occur. And we can see images from the landscape plan that's shown here, and what that shows is in the area of the main change around the 2 new properties and the 2 converted modern section of the care home, we've got a lot of hedgerows and additional tree planting being proposed as part of this scheme, which will help to green this environment when people come into the site. With regards to access and traffic, obviously that's been mentioned in the reports as objection. The access is existing. It's at a position on Dixon's Bank where there's good sight lines in both directions. The existing nursing home, when in use, would have involved obviously staff, medical visitors, delivery vehicles, and visitors to the residents. And this proposal for 5 dwellings is considered to not add any significant additional traffic, which would raise either highway safety or highway capacity concerns. I think arguably traffic to the care home probably would have been more grouped than or more concentrated over certain parts of the day than 5 properties it would likely to be. But that's probably enough for me to say, Chair. I can more than happy come back on any points, but the recommendation is for the approval of the scheme subject to the conditions which have been detailed, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Anybody got any questions for Andy on this development?
Councillor Wilson wishes to
Councillor
speak.
Wilson, you wish to speak?
Is that still single carriageway road up outside that place, Andrew?
Andy?
Is it single carriageway road in that direction?
Yeah, Andy, your photographs are out of date.
All right.
You're only showing 2 lanes. Due to the fact that we had a traffic improvement thing on Christmas time, but they built an extra road in, an extra lane in, which...
Yeah.
So that means turning right into there or turning right out of there, you're going to have 2 lanes across the other way?
Yes.
Right.
I should point out, Councillor, it's obviously no different to the, that's an existing property with an existing access with a certain amount of traffic that accesses that already. So there's no changes proposed by this scheme. I guess the point is relative to the highway outside.
Yeah. Anybody else? Councillor Platt, did I see your hand up? No? Councillor Cope, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask how long it has been a care home? When was it last actually a private dwelling? Do we have that information?
You, Andy?
No, don't know, Chair.
Anybody else want to ask Andy anything? Right, we have with us again, we have an agent again.
Chair, Councillors Garvey and Nugent want to speak.
Right, Councillor Garvey, would you go first?
Thanks, Chair. Can I just ask Andrew? There is a segment here that says the development will also see the removal of 3 healthy established trees. Is that the trees you were talking about that have changed? They're going to remain.
That's right, Councillor. Yeah, it's been confirmed that those trees would remain. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Nugent, do you wish to speak?
Councillor Nugent, you're on mute.
Sorry?
We can hear you now. You're on mute again, Councillor Nugent. Do you want to?
Yeah, okay. I can't agree with this development because of the heritage of the property, the wildlife, the whole culture and the character of the dwelling around the place and the green space. I don't think we should be building on the.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anybody else wish to say something? Councillor Platt.
I don't see a problem with the existing building changing that, but I do see a problem with the 2 new buildings. I think you're taking up green space again, which, once it's taken up, will never be reclaimed.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Nugent again. Can't hear you.
Councillor Nugent, you need to unmute your mic, Mary.
Okay.
Didn't hear you, Mary. Can you say it again?
I did ask the question, if you heard properly what I said about my objection, because this mute was playing up and I just didn't know if you heard me properly.
No, we didn't hear the end of your statement.
Yeah, I said I disagreed with the development on the grounds of the heritage and the trees and the wildlife and the habitat for the wildlife. I can't support that. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Branson.
Yes. I'm just a bit concerned here that we're trying to preserve things in Aspic, I'm afraid. I'm under the understanding that the nursing home's no longer operating. So if you don't agree to the development, are you assuming somebody else is going to open another nursing home? As far as I can see, the development that you're looking at here is not over obtrusive. It does maintain most of the trees that you've got there. Yes, you do lose the grassed area, but at the end of the day, that grassed area wasn't available for members of the public, as far as I'm aware. It was for the benefit of people in a nursing home. So my own personal view is that this is an acceptable development for those reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Branson. Councillor Ostrom.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Councillor Branson said, because when this was a nursing home, you would have had, I don't know how many residents, it's quite a large place, so I should imagine be a substantial number. All the staff and visitors, and as Andrew said, the medical staff going in and out. So there would have been a lot more traffic. And as David said, that grassed area wasn't available to members of the public, only to people in the nursing home. So I think it would be preferable to have dwellings rather than to have it as a nursing home from the point of view of the local residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Can I just say, I think we're ahead of ourselves here.
We are a little bit, yes.
About debating now. I think we need to be listening to.
We need to be listening. We do.
Ahead of themselves. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So we've asked Andy all the questions we can ask him. We'll now go to the agent. It's the same gentleman that we had at the last application, Andy Bircham. Are you there, Mr. Bircham?
Can you hear me, sorry?
Yes, we can hear you. On 5 minutes, Mr. Bircham. Carry on.
Okay, I'll make my start. The redevelopment at Westmoor View comprises the conversion of the care home buildings into 3 residential dwellings, and in addition to new units, three residential dwellings, and in addition has to be constructed. Sorry, that's 2. We knew this application would be potentially difficult from day one, as any new housing schemes generally draw attention, and understandably so given the factors usually involved. From the beginning, my client has consulted with Planning and Highways to ensure we approach this sensibly and effectively to produce a high-quality scheme. This was not without its pitfalls, and perhaps one of the biggest mistakes was the original intention to remove 4 trees with protection orders from the site, which the client felt would help open up the site to give more feeling of space. The removal of the trees was not advised by the local authority and generated the majority of the original complaints towards the development. However, these complaints have now had a positive effect on the development, as the design has now been turned around to reflect this. Instead, the new development focuses on the importance of retraining the trees, and not a single tree will be removed from the new development. The design compromises a central courtyard with the new buildings repositioned carefully to reflect the existing design layout and form a focal point around the large mature horse chestnut tree now central to the development. The spacing around the new properties, together with part demolition and opening up of the spaces between the existing buildings, will allow for backdrop views to the mature trees behind. In addition, the planting of hedging and a number of new trees is proposed for the further enhancement of the site, making this site truly special, where the built environment and natural beauty of the site work together harmoniously. Indeed, the new dwellings are not overbearing, as in some local recent developments which have sought to utilise and build upon as much of the site as possible. Again, careful consideration to the number of dwellings was given so as not to oversaturate the site. The client also wanted the original building of Westmoor House to stand out in its significance, and has retained a larger plot area to help emphasise this. Highway safety has been raised as a concern. However, it is worth pointing out that in its use as a care home, over 50 staff were previously employed at the site, which involved 3 staff changes daily, and not forgetting to include the vehicular movement of daily visits from relatives and delivery supplies and medication. The site has been in operation as such for over 30 years, and we believe there have been no accidents as a consequence of its use. In comparison, the traffic generation and movement between the site will clearly be significantly less with change of use to 5 dwellings. The access to and from the site is clear, unobstructed visibility in both directions, and vehicles will enter and leave the site in a forward gear, ensuring safety for those using the site. There's a clear demand for this type of housing, and this is evident from the sale and approval of other similar developments. The new dwellings, the conversion of the existing building safeguards Westmoor House and its heritage, as well as continued use of the site. The development of 2 dwellings is an acceptable lot of what is a very small part of an extensive grassed area, which have no impact to wildlife, tree or landscape features. The site is private and therefore of no loss to public amenity. The new dwellings are a good design in keeping with the site and other local developments in terms of size, scale and materials. The site is well screened by the existing trees, retained, and in the whole the development will remain unseen from most passing. The site lies within walking distance from local services and public transport, therefore the proposed development is considered sustainable, which is in keeping with local and national policies in relation to this type of development. It is in our view that the redevelopment of the site would not result in any loss or have any adverse effect on the surrounding residential area, and therefore request that this scheme be granted approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bircham. Anybody got any questions for Mr. Bircham? No? Okay, we now have an objector. We have a Mr. Adrian Walker. Are you with us, Mr. Walker?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Chair. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could I raise a query first, please, just from what I've actually heard, just before I go into my please.
It's not normal, Mr. Walker, but we will. We're trying to be fair to everybody. Go ahead.
Yeah, my concern is just to explain to the committee that I live at Westmoor, where I've lived for 30 years. But I am concerned that the image, as has been mentioned previously, was an old one and didn't show the road widening. from personal experience, this road is now much more dangerous. And when this was a nursing home which opened, I believe, in the 80s when we moved here, because it converted after we'd moved in, we're in a different position now with the road widening to what we were when it was a nursing home. And I think that should be taken into consideration. So I just say I'm concerned about the use of an old plan. That was all.
Right. Right. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Okay, you've got 5 minutes to make your objection.
Okay. The Westmoor residents object to this planning application on the following grounds. Proportions. Dividing the site up into 5 unequal plots harms the original heritage building which was built pre-1890. The converted executive properties do not have garages, as sufficient land has not been allocated to them in the design brief. If the site is divided into 3 proportionate plots, their relative magnitudes would be in balance and would make more sense. 3 plots will be more in keeping with the size of the converted executive properties and would enable them to have garages, which is more usual for houses of this type. Shared drive. A shared drive is not adequate for 5 properties on this size of site and is not in accord with the Martin West neighbourhood plan. 3 properties with proper gardens and garages may be acceptable at a push. Backland development and greenfield site. The existing parks and green spaces policy in the neighbourhood plan indicates that applications which result in the loss of green space, which makes a positive contribution to the character of the area and local amenity, will be resisted. The updated neighbourhood plan extends this policy to reference locally valued landscapes, even if divided into 3 plots. This again ties in with the heritage status. Middlesbrough Council should be seeking to preserve gardens and green spaces. House building. There is a glut of houses, and in particular so-called executive houses in South Middlesbrough. Road safety. 3 houses would be safer than 5 houses with access and egress via a single drive onto the very busy 3-lane section of Dixon's Bank, which carries up to 25,000 cars per day. Bins. There is the issue of a large number of bins outside the single drive on bin day. The Westmoor residents therefore request that this application is rejected and a proposal for no more than 3 dwellings based upon the existing building is submitted. We are against the building of executive houses on the front lawn. This is not a windfall development. We consider it to be an overdevelopment of the site. Middlesbrough 5-year housing supply. The 5-year housing supply is contained in the 2018-19 annual monitoring report. Based on houses built in 2019, Middlesbrough needs to build 300 houses per year over the next 5 years to meet the current housing plan targets based on the 2014 plan. I would like to remind the committee that Middlesbrough Council is exceeding this figure. Middlesbrough Council's statement of community involvement states that for planning to be seen as positive, all sections of the community must have confidence that the process is legitimate, operates in a timely manner, and produces outcomes that are in the public interest. The process should be simple to follow and delivered in a fair, transparent and efficient manner. And if I can just say, I am concerned that people were starting to actually give opinions on this application before they'd heard all the information with regard to it. Heritage status. This application clearly impacts on the heritage status of Westmoor View. Westmoor View is a traditional building of status on the Historic Environment Record, which is a database of heritage sites and buildings. It is classed as non-designated heritage. The Westmoor residents urge the Planning Committee to consider the effect of this application on the significance of Westmoor View, in particular the harm caused to the existing building by the 2 new build properties on the greenfield area of the site. Over the years, the site has been diminished. This happened firstly when the other Westmoor properties, including my house, were built in the grounds of Westmoor House. The main
I just
difference
interrupt. You've only
is
got
that these
20 seconds
houses were
left
in
of your 5
proportion
minutes remaining.
and that they all have gardens.
Don't think he heard you, Emma. Mr. Walker, you've got 20 seconds left.
They all have gardens and separate entrances. We accept that something has to be done with this large extension. However, the site would be better if it is divided into 3 plots without squeezing 2 additional executive houses in the front garden to the detriment of the existing building. If this
Mr. Walker,
application
that's
is
your
approved,
5 minutes up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Thank you, Emma. Right. We now have a ward councillor who wishes to speak. Councillor Chris Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. The report states the proposed dwellings in the planning application would contribute towards achieving the housing requirement to have way over capacity on the number of houses being built. I have no objection to the original house being divided into 3 and keeping the beautiful garden. I am totally against extra housing in the grounds which would have a detrimental effect on the neighbouring properties. The access and egress is very difficult as another lane has been added to Dixon's Bank, and this will make it very difficult to turn right. How many bins would be stood out on the pavement, causing problems for pedestrians? This is once again a developer being greedy and wanting it all. The house could be made beautiful with lovely gardens to go with it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor. Right, so before the committee go down into discussion over this, has anybody else got any questions they'd like to ask on what we've heard so far?
Chair, can I just come back on some points that were made? I think it's probably worth.
Of course you can, Andy, yes.
All right, Chair. Thank you. There was obviously discussion about the road and the access. The care home's closed, so it's not having an impact on the access with traffic in and out in particular. But we've heard that there were 50 staff there at one point over 3 shifts. So you'd assume that when one shift comes in and another shift goes out at that particular point in time, there's a lot of traffic in and out of that site. That site has a care home use. That building could reopen as a care home tomorrow, wouldn't require any planning permissions or anything else. So we've got what is an established position on the amount of traffic in and out of that site. This is not all new development. So I think officer opinion would be that this scheme will not add traffic to what it could generally generate if that existing use were kind of brought back, if that makes sense. So there's no concerns over sort of highway aspects in that regard. There was talk that the shared drive's not adequate for 5 properties, but again, in the amount of traffic, officers don't consider that to be a reasonable consideration. We see shared drives. We approve a lot of shared drives all through the estates, and we see 5, 6, sometimes more properties served off those shared drives. So that's not a particular issue from an officer perspective. There was mention to green spaces as well in the Martin West neighbourhood plan. The green space indicated in the Martin West neighbourhood plan, this site isn't indicated within the green space in the Martin West neighbourhood plan. So I just need to mention that to members. And I suppose the other points that I'll comment on, I mean, Paul might want to pick up some bits and pieces on the housing supply side of things, but was just reference to bins on bin day. The applicant was asked this question, and they've basically shown bin stands within the sort of entrance gateway into the site. So the bins would be pulled by the applicants, by the occupiers of the properties to that position where they could be collected from there. Yeah, it will have an impact on bin day, but every 95% of houses pull the bins out on bin day, and they have that same impact all the way along sort of some of our key routes, Acklam Road, Martin Road, and places like that. So it's not particularly any different to those existing situations. That's all I've got to say, Chair. I don't know if I think there was some possibly need a bit of clarity, Paul, around some of the housing comments around numbers.
Yes, certainly, Chair. If I may,
Would you like to speak, Paul?
I would please, Chair, if I may. Just to come back on the 5-year land supply issue. It is correct. We do have in excess of a 5-year housing land supply in Middlesbrough. However, the key point here is that if members consider that taking on board all planning considerations, the scheme is acceptable, the 5-year land supply is not an issue. The 5-year land supply is more of a key issue for the councillors when we don't have one. In this instance, if members decide that, having considered the application, that in planning terms it's an acceptable scheme, then the fact that we've got more than 5 years land supply is not a relevant consideration. Allowance is always made for what is called windfall sites, and windfall sites are those sites in urban areas where we haven't identified for housing development come forward, but are considered to be acceptable when you consider against the planning issues and merits. That's all I really want to say, Chair, unless anybody's got any questions they want to ask me about those housing elements.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody got anything to ask, Paul? Any questions? No? Right, so all the, sorry, Branson, Councillor Branson, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I think I've got a little bit of a misunderstanding here. When first having a look at the application, I thought the straightforward was opposing the application full stop. Now, what we're hearing is, yes, they're happy to do an application, but only for 3 properties. Could somebody clarify that? Because I'm a little bit unsure here as to what our decisions will lead to. I don't want to be in a situation, I think I've made my point, of we do nothing and we just throw it out. What is our position to work on from here?
Chair, do you want me to come back?
I would appreciate it, Andy, if you would explain to David what the application is. Yes.
Yeah. So the application is it's a single application for conversion of the 3 properties into houses. Sorry, for the conversion of the care home into 3 houses and the additional 2 properties that are within the site. What you need to do is, if members are unhappy with the 2 houses and wish that to be refused, then the application is refused. The applicant has the ability to appeal that decision. The applicant has the ability to amend the scheme and potentially try and address any issues that members raise as part of their decision making. But it's really, the scheme in front is the conversion to conversion of the care home and the additional 2 properties, so 5 in total.
Does that explain it for you, Councillor Branson?
Yes, thanks very much.
Councillor Branson, does that explain it to you?
Sorry, I thought I'd said yes. That's
yes,
okay.
Sorry. Okay. Councillor Cope, you wish to say something?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I do note there is quite a number of objections. I'm just trying to get my head around the possibilities here, because you've looked at the map where you have the existing properties. That's fine. So you can take the existing house or the house that was there originally and turn it back into 1 property. Fine. You can take the other property, you can turn it into 2. That's fine. That leaves the other land, which the proposal to put 2 properties on. Now, if that was effectively turned down and we said that, what we would prefer to see is just that would leave that quite large area of land, which presumably would be in the property of the main house, or may not be, because otherwise it would be difficult to turn the gardens into that for the other house unless you took into that communal road. It might be an offspring, if you like. So that would be my only concern, that if we did leave this, and I do see the arguments, what would that piece of land end up as? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, has anybody else got anything to say at all? Anything? Nothing? Right, okay. So we'll hand it to the committee. and ask if any member wishes to put forward a proposal in respect of this application. Councillor Wilson? Can't hear you, Councillor.
Pleasure. I think, Chair, we should have conditions involved here. When you said, right, I think it should be a yellow box junction. A lot of traffic come down Dixon's Bank and going up Dixon's Bank peak times. Looking at the future, you're going to get more traffic again coming from the Nunthorpe and Sutton Road area where they're building new houses. So I do definitely think we need a yellow box junction of some description for traffic coming in and out, especially when you're crossing two lanes to make that right turn, in or out. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Thompson?
I think Councillor Garvey was before me.
Was he?
Yeah.
I've lost Councillor Garvey. He's gone. He's gone home. I think, oh, there he is. Councillor Garvey. Sorry, Rick.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, Chair. I'm asking the committee as a whole here. The trees were a big issue for me, and the 27. I mean, how many times do we put 27 consultations out and they all come back? They all come back, which is important because that's the people who live around there. That's important to me as well. But looking for a material planning concern to turn this application down, I'm struggling. So I'm putting. I would ask the committee if there is. I think what Councillor Branson said was spot on. Sometimes we do look to say no or to stop development or calm development. But I am struggling, Chair, to first of all say yes or say no. So I would ask the committee to, if anyone has any material planning concerns, to say why we should or we could say no to this. Then can they speak up?
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I can't see the reason why to refuse this application. They're not removing any of the trees, which was my concern. You can't see it because of all the trees. I can't see it infringing on any properties. I can't see the increase on refuse and traffic because, as stated before, when it was a care home, that was still that was even worse. The traffic. So I can't see a reason to refuse this. So I'm supporting and putting a proposal that I approve.
Councillor Branson.
Yeah, really, my main concern here is what's going to happen to the site if you don't give approval. It's not been used as a nursing home. At some stage in the future, if you don't watch out, become flats, then you would have a much greater problem in regard to access from the road. Now, if the people had come here and said, we want 3 houses and we're leaving the area at the other side as a grassed area, for access, would have been delighted. That would be great. But that's not really what we've got here. That's the problem. It seems to me we've got a plan for development, or just leave it as it is. Now, much as I said, I think there isn't a very good reason to say no. I think the area isn't being used as a nursing home. We can't maintain it. I mean, a lot of nursing homes are now changing. They're becoming larger. We're going to get this problem in lots of areas. You can't just keep it as it always is. And I just have this feeling that the area is going to remain undeveloped. And that's probably worse than having the development that we're talking about here. I think the points have been made, so that's really it.
Thank you, Councillor Branson. Councillor Ostrom.
I apologise for earlier, Chair, when I spoke out of order. Has anyone actually...
Think nothing of it.
Did Councillor Thompson actually make a proposal? I'm sorry.
I don't think she has yet. We'll just go around everybody, then we'll go.
I did, Chair.
You did? Yeah, okay. So
we accept it.
And you're going to second it, Jolie, did you say?
Yes.
Right. Has anybody else got anything to say? Anybody got anything to say against it? No? Okay, then we'll go to a vote. It's been proposed by Councillor Thompson that we pass this application. It's been seconded by Councillor Rostrum that we pass this application. So I'll go through the names again. The words are for if we're going to pass it, against if we want to turn it down, or not vote at all. We'll start off with Councillor Wilson.
For.
Councillor Thompson's for, Councillor Rostrum's for, Councillor Platt.
I'm against it.
You're against it. Councillor Nugent. Councillor Nugent, are you with us?
I think she's left, Chair. She did say she had to leave at 10 to 3, I do believe.
Okay, so we're one down. Councillor Garvey.
Abstain, Chair.
You're going to abstain. David Branson.
I'd be for. Councillor Cope.
Against.
Councillor Hobson, John Hobson, and I'm against.
Chair, you haven't asked Councillor Dodds.
Councillor Dodds, that's who's hiding behind that piece. I've got a piece of paper or something coming on my screen. Councillor Dodds.
Oh, it's because I'm quiet.
Chair, I can confirm that 5 of the 9 members have voted to approve the application, 3 to refuse and 1 abstained.
Very much. So, I can confirm that following the vote, the decision of the committee is to approve this application. Thank you very much. Right, we'll go on to the next one, which is one for Hamilton Road. Andy, would you show your screen, please?
Yes, Chair, thanks. Just take a second. So this application, it relates to a site in Stainton, and planning permission is sought for the erection of a single detached dwelling with a detached garage on the site of an existing bungalow, and the bungalow would be demolished as part of the works. So the site lies in within the Stainton and Thornton Conservation Area. The yellow line that's shown on the plans there is the boundary of the conservation area, and we can just see the faint red line around this property here to the south of Hemington Road. That's just within the boundary of the conservation area, and that's the application site. What this slide also shows, it's Hemington Road is the kind of main road in the village from this direction. It shows a relatively modern cul-de-sac of detached properties, which is Glebe Gardens. We can see that to the south. They aren't in the conservation area. And it shows residential properties on the opposite side of the street. There's a terrace of houses on the opposite side. Adjacent to the site is a small terrace of 3 two-storey properties. And on the opposite side of the road, we've got a pair of semis. We can see from the satellite image, just puts it in a little bit more context. The application site is essentially the greened site with a red circle in the middle. The red circle is just on the bungalow, and you can see the surrounding properties. We've got a few street view images. So this is the existing bungalow, the front and the rear. The application site is the bungalow roof that you can just see on the far right hand side of the image. So this is properties 10, I think 10, 12 and 14 Hemington Row, the adjacent terrace. And we've got images of this is the junction of Glebe Gardens and Hemington Road. Again, the bungalow is on the corner. We've got Glebe Gardens, so you get a feel for the properties in Glebe Gardens looking down the street there. And you also should get a feel from the character of this area. There's a number of trees around the periphery of this site and a hedgerow at the front. So that gives a sort of green aspect to the site. And there are some of the key considerations moving on. When the application was initially submitted, it was for a detached dwelling. It was relatively formal in its appearance, and that's what the slide on there is showing at the moment. It was sort of what I would say is visibly of scale. It appears to be quite a big building. It had a detached double garage, and it had a balcony on the rear, and you can see the balconies highlighted. It was quite wide, it was quite long. It was the sort of balcony where you could quite easily get a sort of table and chairs up there if you were that way minded. There's been a number of objections to the scheme that were received as part of the initial proposal, and they're detailed within the reports. The kind of key things that they raised concerns over were around the loss of privacy, considerations of the proposal being overbearing, the impact on the character of the street scene and the conservation area, and on highway safety grounds. I think it's fair to say officers had some concerns as well, and a number of changes were requested as part of the process of the application. I think importantly, the application site is within the limits of development. It's within a residential area. The site is already in residential use. So again, the principle of residential development on this site is, it has been established, if you like. The main issues relate therefore to whether it is in keeping with the scale and appearance, whether the proposal that is in keeping with the scale and appearance of the surroundings, taking into account it being within a conservation area and its impact on the surrounding amenity. So the initially proposed scheme was considered to not really reflect the character of the surroundings. The properties and the balcony at the rear was felt would undermine privacy and overlook a little bit to the rear. The applicant and agent have since agreed to make amendments to this scheme, and I'll just run through what those amendments are. So we've got an amended front elevation. You can see that from the image. We've got a drop down in the roof line, and we've got a sort of window partly within the roof space. And this, from an officer's perspective, gives more of a cottage feel to this proposal as viewed from the front. I'll just quickly flick onto the street scene so you can see this is the existing street scene. They're all 2-story, and we've got drop down in roof lines, and we've got a sort of dormer roof above this window in the elevation. So what we've got at the moment is kind of consistent with some of those principles. The rear, what we call the rear outshoot, so the extended rear section, which is not the full width of the property, but a narrower width of the property, has been reduced by 1 metre in width, and there's got a hip roof on it now. So that orange line kind of defines roughly where it was initially proposed. So we're reducing.
I'm not getting anything on here. All I've got is a single picture. I don't know whether other people have got the same thing. You talk about something, I can't see it.
Yes, Andy, I think the presentation's frozen on the street scene.
Right, bear with me. I'll stop sharing and I'll start sharing again, and hopefully that will sort it out.
I can try and share if you want me to, Andy. I've got the presentation up.
If you could, Paul, that would be great.
I'll take it from the street.
Yeah. Right, can members still hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see anything.
Okay. It appears we're having some sort of technical difficulty.
There we are.
Are they on?
Yeah, we can see that now.
Yeah. So have you got the amended front elevation then? Is that on there?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, great. So the front elevation.
I think Andy's having technical issues. Paul, you're on mute. You need to unmute your microphone, Paul. Paul, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone if you just want to click OK.
Brilliant,
Yeah.
thanks. I'm trying to work out what's happened to it all. Seem to have lost everything at the moment other than what's up there. All right, I think the point Andy had got to, I don't know if you can just see that. Hopefully Andy will can come back in and take over. but initially, as you can see, proposed, there was a two-storey dwelling. I think the point that Andy was making to the rear, you had the balcony, and there's a double garage. Some of the changes that wasn't really considered acceptable by officers, and some of the changes which are now being proposed. Obviously, that balcony has been removed. The imagery from the front, as you can see, as proposed there, it's slightly different. It's stepped back a bit. It's slightly smaller. The balcony's been removed. They've done the garages have been changed slightly, so the garage front is not as dominant as it was before. So there's the proposed street scene, as members can see. The existing number 10 and the proposal number 8. Glebe Close and the property either side. The issue there being it fits in with the street scene. The property, when viewed from Glebe Close, the property will be roughly where the arrow is. There's not considerable impact upon that. View from neighbouring garden. And what this image shows is the distances between adjacent properties. Those distances are well within the in excess of the limits that we normally expect from such developments, and officers consider that to be acceptable. Floor elevation, floor plans, and that chair is it. That's the proposal. And I think Andy's actually touched upon most of the points. So I think all we didn't really see was the elevations. I'll just go back for members so they can see what they are. As initially proposed and as the current proposal. So at that point, I'll stop sharing and open it up.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody got any questions for Paul on this application? No? Can't see Colin. She around there somewhere? No?
Hi there. So I'm back. If that's
Right. Anybody got any questions for Andy then? If you don't want to talk to Paul,
I'm not offended.
You should be. Right. We shall carry on. We have no applicant or agents, but we do have an objector. The objector is Deborah Carlyle. Are you with us, Deborah?
Mrs. Carlyle, you need to press star and 6 to unmute your microphone. Mrs. Carlyle, are you there? You need to press star and 6 to unmute your microphone. Mrs. Carlyle, please press 6 and star and 6 to unmute your microphone. I don't
think we're going to get it, Georgina, are we?
No, it doesn't seem that way.
Right, so perhaps Andy, is Andy still with us? Has he come back?
no, I'm here, Chair. Yeah,
Do you have any idea what this lady was going to say?
I don't, Chair. There was nothing forwarded through. I believe Mrs. Carlyle's 8 Hemlington Road. I think, is that right, Georgina?
I believe so, yes.
I think possibly it's maybe just Paul, from our perspective, worth highlighting the sort of maybe the side elevation of the property and the sort of nature of the
Would you do that, Paul, please?
I'll just bring the slides back up and Andy can talk me through which one he wants.
Can you, yeah, slide 19 probably is 18 and 19, Paul, are the two key ones in relation to neighbour's property there.
Oh. Hello, it's Deborah Carlyle here. Am I able to speak?
Hello, Mrs. Carlyle.
Sorry, I had technical difficulties there.
Okay, you've got 5 minutes, Mrs. Carlyle. You can start now.
Okay, that's fine. So I have submitted a number of objections, which I hope will still be taken into consideration. Although all amendments have been made to the original plans, this does not in any way lessen the impact the proposed bill will have on our home and ultimately our well-being. If the plans do go ahead, then this will mean we will be looking onto an 8-metre wall with soil pipes running down the side from both inside the house and in the garden. This will cause a significant impact in terms of loss of light and will significantly feel overbearing. I'm also concerned about the proximity of the proposed house to the boundary of our house. What is classed as a 2-storey offshoot of 4 metres and 8 metres high will significantly affect the light and block out at best the sun from 3 p.m. onwards and daylight, a time when I've come in from work and want to enjoy some sun on the patio. This is what we take into consideration when buying the house. If this goes ahead, then we will no longer be able to enjoy afternoons and evening sun on our patio. Our house is a home where we have invested a lot of money and time. We spend a lot of time inside and in the garden. It has caused us a lot of anxiety and stress over the recent months at the thought of the impact this is going to have if the proposed plans go ahead. And that concludes my objections. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carlyle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody wish to ask Mrs. Carlyle anything while we're here? No? Everybody's hands up. Right. Anybody got any more questions to ask on anything on this application before we go into lockdown? David Cook, you would like to speak?
Yes, Chair. Being the local councillor, one of my main concerns around that area is not just the impact of that house, and I did know the previous occupant, is the impact of traffic at that point. So people park at the side of the road, but I did note in this plans there were garage and there were going to be off-road parking. But having said that, it is a very particularly bad area. I can understand what the residents are saying, but the existing property is quite old and is not in a particularly good state. I have mixed feelings about it, but I'm willing to listen to all discussions, etc. But it is a particular bad area for access there, and the bus quite often has a lot of trouble getting through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, we'll go back to the committee then, and we'll ask if anybody has any proposals to make on this application. Silence. What about you, Councillor Cook? It's your ward.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I have great mixed feelings. I know as the parish council we didn't object, but that was before the residents objected, in a few cases quite strongly. I have mixed views. It is, I would say that part is in the conservation area. Having looked at the design of the property, it is not really against the rest of the street scene, but it will block the light off. I do remember when there used to be a church hall next to that site, and that was changed when Glebe Gardens was put in. So the area has changed an awful lot. But as I should listen to the residents, I have listened to them and I've read about what the objections are. I would find it quite difficult to support the application at the present time. I have listened, I come in with an open mind, but I would have to listen to my residents. And in that case, I would propose that we don't support the application, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, can I just ask Andrew, is this the only bungalow in this area? Because look, judging by the pictures, that it all looks like there's houses around there. So this house would fit in with the other houses. Is that right?
That's right, Councillor Thompson. Sorry, through you, Chair. Yeah, there is a house in Glebe Gardens. Sorry, a bungalow in Glebe Gardens out the back, but the majority of them are houses. There's houses, terrace houses opposite. There's semi houses opposite, and there's a small terrace to the side. So there's a mix of detached, semi, and terraces. And again, yeah, they're all predominantly houses. That is the sort of predominant character. If I can just maybe comment on the sort of highways traffic side of things, really. I think obviously the road through the village is what it was. It's been there a long time, and it served that village for an awful long time. So it's arguably a thing of its day, really. So it's probably not necessarily built the way, into the widths and things that current roads would. And some of the properties probably aren't served by driveways as they might be if they were designed and built today. But I think importantly, this has got an existing access and it's got an existing property on there, and the layout of the plot shows that vehicles have the potential to be able to drive in and drive back out of the site forwards, because there's a small sort of turning area to the front of the property, but largely it's not really affecting traffic beyond the current situation, really. So I'll just add that in. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Andy. Anybody else got anything to say? Councillor Garvey?
Thanks, Chair. Can I just confirm that the application, the parking and the would be better than it currently is with the property as it stands? So there'll be somewhere to park on the property on the new application where there isn't now. Can I confirm that?
Andy, can you confirm that?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, there is an existing access to the front of the property, but the garage for this current proposal is right in the back corner, so the driveway leading to that would be all the way up to the back. So there'd be quite a reasonable amount of car parking and the garage as well within that. So there's quite a bit.
Councillor Cope, you wish to come back?
Yeah, can I say, Chair, that the previous owner only had one car and he used to park it on his drive, etc. He didn't cause any added problems to the horrendous problems that there are at that point. But I do understand the plans do take it up and take all the cars off the road. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Cope. So then, do we have a proposal or do we not have a proposal? Nobody's saying anything, everyone's stumped. Right, okay, so I'll make a proposal. I propose that we accept the application. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Rostron.
I'll second it.
And just Councillor Platt. I've got 2 seconders. And Carolyn Dodds, I've got 3. Things are going better. Right, so we'll go into a vote. The proposal is that we accept the application as per the officer's report. Seconded by Julia Robson, Julia Rostron, Jim Platt and Caroline Dodds. So we vote for, against or abstain. We'll start again with Councillor Wilson.
For the application.
For. Councillor Thompson.
Approve.
Councillor Rostron's for. Councillor Platt's for. Councillor Nugent's gone home. Councillor Garvey.
For, Chair.
Councillor Dodds.
For.
Councillor Branson.
For.
Councillor Cope.
Councillor Coop, can you unmute your microphone, please?
So I thought I had. I said 4. Thank you.
Councillor Hobson for.
I can confirm that all 9 members of the committee have voted to approve the application, Chair.
Yeah, so I can now confirm that following the vote, the decision of the committee is to approve the application. Thank you very much for that. This is St Cuthbert's Youth Stroke Community Centre. Andy, would you share your screen with us, please?
I'm going to ask Paul if he can share his screen, actually, just so I don't actually
Okay.
somehow disconnect myself by doing that. Is that all right?
Are we all in favour of Paul sharing his screen with us? Yes, go on, Paul.
Right. Thank you, Chair.
Can you
So
see that? Is that the right screen being shared?
Yes.
All right.
yeah, so this planning permission is seeking to change the use of part of the former St Cuthbert's Youth and Community Centre from a community centre use to a public house. So this slide shows the building. It's located in Newport. It's just next to St Cuthbert's Church, or what we assume is St Cuthbert's Church. It's adjacent to the A66, which runs north-south, and it's just to the south of the Newport interchange roundabout. Members will be fairly familiar with that. The next slide just gives it a little bit more context. We can see the relationship of the site, which is the applicant owns all the land edged in blue. Just to the north of that is the former church, which I think is a squash club community centre type building now. And this kind of really shows it in context of the wider residential area. So we've got residential to the south and the west. The next slide. Oh, sorry, just going back to that slide. Sorry, Paul. There's two red squares, effectively. There's two elements to this proposal, but it's all part of the same scheme, if you like. The building, which is edged in red on the right-hand side, is where the pub is proposed to be located. The green area on the left-hand side is intended to be used as a pub beer garden. So members need to be aware of those two elements to the scheme, and obviously how that's relevant to where the residential properties are, I think. So yeah, this next slide, it shows the overall application site, sorry, the overall area owned by the applicant. It shows the building as a sort of T shape. There's a hard surface car park between this building and the church, which is the hatched green building. And then we've got this grassed area to the rear, which is shown as a solid green area. If we just, that's it. Yeah, thank you, Paul. This building's already got different uses within it. So part of it is operating as a sales and repair sort of centre for commercial equipment. The remainder of the building is currently in community use, and I believe that it's not really been used as a community building to any extent at this point in time. The proposed public house is obviously indicated on that plan there as where that would be located within that part of the building. The report details all the sort of considerations around this proposal, but I'm just going to summarise on what officers kind of considered to be the two key aspects, and we'll obviously answer any members' queries as part of that. There are three objections to this application. They're mainly around concerns over antisocial behaviour, noise and disturbance, parking problems, and insufficient street lighting. They're all dealt with in the report. So just turning to these two key aspects of the scheme. The principle of development in this location and impact on residential amenity. In terms of the principle of the pub, it's a town centre use, and national and local planning policy would guide or steer town centre uses to other designated centres within Middlesbrough. Town centre is the closest centre in this instance, and it's just on the other side of the Newport roundabout, and that's the very furthest western part of the town centre. In view of the scale of the proposed pub being fairly small, there are other available premises within the town centre which are vacant or could accommodate the use, and as such it effectively fails or does not pass the sequential test. But as with all applications, we need to consider this, the other material planning considerations. And first and foremost to that, officers have given a bit of consideration to where this site is. We recognising that Newport is fairly severed from the rest of Middlesbrough, mainly because of the A66 and the Newport interchange, which are fairly substantial sort of engineering obstacles, if you like. Now, that's not to say that there aren't pedestrian routes. So we've got a slide here showing sort of pedestrian routes over the A66 and under the A66. And if you just move on to the next slide, Paul, that kind of shows the sort of walking routes that entails. These routes aren't really what you would normally anticipate between a settlement of this size and your local centre for local provisions. I think members will be aware as well that sustainability is one of the key aspects of planning, and part of sustainability is really about having It's about having housing in locations which are well served by services and provisions, with easy access, doesn't involve the private motor vehicle, but really where things support pedestrian connections and within a reasonable walking distance. Now, given the scale of this settlement in this part of Middlesbrough, officers have taken the slightly unusual view here that adding a pub into this location of the nature and scale that's been proposed would actually add and support the sustainability of Newport a little bit. A lot of provisions have obviously left Newport over the decades, and it's felt that this would assist in creating a degree of sustainability for Newport. It's also considered that adding such a use like this to the existing community building and next to the adjacent church, which already has a squash club and is partly in community use, helps to create a cluster of community type provisions within this locality. So what's key to this though really is, from an officer consideration anyway, that we need to ensure the proposed pub remains of a scale and nature that's appropriate to its setting, away from an established centre. It's been agreed with the applicant through discussions to get it this far that really to be able to support it, opening days and hours of the pub should be restricted to sort of indicate that it is truly a sort of community provision rather than being a wider provision, which you would argue should just be in the town centre. The applicant's been completely agreeable to that and has suggested sort of 5-day opening week and opening on afternoons and evenings from 3 p.m. onwards, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and midday onwards, Saturday and Sunday. And there's conditions which would control that are recommended as part of this scheme. So the other main consideration relates to residential amenity. So if we look at the next slide, Paul. The building's relatively close to a number of residential properties, and one of them in particular has got a garden which would abut the proposed beer garden. The pub part of the building is, if we just look at the next slide, is set away from the pub part of the building, is the white rendered part, and that's set away from the residential properties on the opposite side of the remainder of this building. It's the officer's view that the use can operate in this location without unduly affecting residential amenity through noise and disturbance, but in order to ensure that the building, the building really needs to be adequately soundproofed to prevent noise transfer, and the conditions recommended to achieve that. And again, just referring back, it's felt necessary to limit the use of the beer garden to not be late into the evening, and it's suggested by condition that it's required by the conditions recommended that would be 8 p.m. But that also requires any further noise mitigation to be put in place that would be required. As with all these schemes, or many of these schemes, our environmental health team ask for noise surveys to be done and adequate mitigation to be put in place, which may include noise screens and things like that. So the beer garden could only really come into use if it passed the findings and mitigation associated with a noise scheme to be submitted as part of the conditions. The existing car park, we can see that it's behind the gates, behind the railings, in between the main sort of stone church building and the rendered building. That's not changing for the building. The building footprint isn't changing. So again, it's a community building. Community people can come here en masse and occupy this building. It's obviously intended to be a local provision. So officers feel that the sort of parking arrangements are adequate. Refuse will be stored within that rear area. And I think that's probably it really, Chair. The application, it's recommended for approval and it's subject to those controlling conditions that have been referred to. Thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
Anybody got any questions for Andy? Anybody want to ask him anything? Councillor Garvey?
Thanks, Chair. Andy, I'm having trouble visualising the relationship between the beer garden and the actual place that's going to be the pub. Can you just, because it looks as if it's quite a walk, can you just have a look at that for me and explain it to me?
Andy, can you come in?
Andy, you're on mute.
Sorry, apologies. Right, so the red section on the right-hand side is where the pub building use would be. The section where the green circle is effectively the car park to this overall building, and there's doors in the side of that building at the moment. So the route through would not be out the site round behind the residence. It would be through effectively the car park, which you can see on so where you can see those 5 blue boxes, you can go out the side of the building there through the car park and in, so you can stay within the site to get to the beer garden. I think that
answer your question, Councillor Garvey?
Yes, thanks. It does look is a it's not attached to it, is a walk, so it seems very out the way from compared to where the building's going to actually be. It just seems weird. Thank you.
Councillor Rostron? Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh. The beer garden, is that actually plumb up against the resident's property? The house or the garden? I'm not clear from the diagram.
It is, councillor. It's basically the wall between the two forms the boundary. So yeah, it will be right up against the residential curtilage.
But will it be against the actual wall of the house?
I'm not sure whose ownership the wall's in, whether it's part of the former church and church hall grouping or the house, but it's against that boundary. Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is because I have a situation in my ward where a beer garden was given delegated permission, and the residents that live next door, they constantly have kids bouncing balls against the wall, and they have people in the beer garden swearing so they can't open the windows. So I think that's got to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
I'm sorry, councillor. Were you asking whether it's against the wall of the house or the wall of the garden? It's not against the wall of the house. The church backs on to the wall of the house. The beer garden backs on to the wall of the garden. I'll just share an image. Hopefully that will help explain it. Can you see that? There's the dwelling where the hand is. The church is there. The beer garden is in here against the wall of the garden.
Okay. So is it proposed to actually put something there to actually stop anything going over into the residents' garden?
I'll have to hand over to you, Andy, on that one.
Yeah, well, there's a wall in that position already. I think, can you just drop down the slides, Paul, to the one with the, if you just keep going through that, one up, just go one up, I think. Oh, in fact, sorry.
That one.
Yeah, so if you can it's quite difficult. The top slide, you can just about see the wall where that pointer is. It's a reasonably high wall, but, I'm reasonably certain you would certainly hear voices over it if people are talking loudly. There's no doubt, if people throw something over the wall, then clearly it'll go over. But it's the point is, I guess, that the beer garden is directly abutting the garden with just a wall in between. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Anybody else got anything to ask Andy? We have with us today the applicant, Mr. Russell Towers. Mr. Towers, are you with us?
Mr. Towers, you'll need to press star and 6 to unmute your microphone. Mr. Towers, are you there? You need to press star and 6 to unmute your microphone. I don't think he's there, Chair.
No, I don't think he's there. Well, he only asked if he could turn up this morning, didn't he? He was a bit late in putting it in, so. Does anybody know, does Andy or Paul know what Mr. Towers was going to say? Has he left you a report of what he was going to?
No, sorry, Chair. No, we haven't got any sort of formal words. I know, having spoke to Mr. Towers previously, I suspect he would have been wanting to get across the sort of ethos behind what he was intending to do here as a sort of small community rather than anything more significant than that. But beyond that, I wouldn't like to.
Is he the man whose garden backs onto the garden from this pub? Is he that man on that corner? Is it him?
No, Mr. Towers owns the building, the former community centre, so he's the applicant for this scheme.
So he was probably going to give us an input on why it should happen then.
That's right, Chair, I believe, yeah.
So if he's not going to be there, we can go to committee and ask if any member wishes to put forward a proposal in respect of this application for a new pub.
Councillor Thompson wishes to speak, Chair.
Councillor Thompson. You need to change your wallpaper. I can't see you behind you.
Thank you, Chair. I can't support this application. I just think it's too close to the residential area and the impact it would have on there. The noise, the antisocial behaviour, not only the noise from in